What's up? Are we live? Are we here? I'm not even going to give an introduction. I'm just going to make this guy appear right now. There he is, Nick.
Hey, what's up?
Dude,
What's up, everybody?
This is the closest thing we get to band practice right here.
This is a poor substitute for band practice, but it'll have to do. It'll have to do.
It's 5:01, and we're not trying to bite Levi's style. This is just, I'm trying to make a point here. I was told that you got to give people like a minute just to make sure everyone's online. But we have this thing in Death Cab we always talk about, which is that we put the punctual and punk and punctual.
Yeah,
right.
It's a terrible joke. We've always said we put the punk and punctual.
Yeah, right. Or it's like a buck a minute if you're late. But look, when I'm in charge here, like I am today, I'm trying to make a point.
It's Cinco de Mayo, man. What are you gonna do?
I know, right?
Everybody needs to relax.
Dude, thank you so much, Nick, for doing this.
Of course.
Everyone who's just tuning in, if you watched every other episode, it's been all drummers, but I figured it was time to really dig into my roots here, which goes way back with this gentleman right here. Nick Harmer and I have known each other for, I don't know, 24, 25 years, something like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
We kind of started out playing music together in this weird little prog rock trio, and it was called Eureka Farm. And Ben even had some roots playing with the singer in the band too, in a band called Shed. And Nick was playing bass in that. But in order to really pull back the curtain on what we're doing for you guys, we thought we would go way, way, way back. So
yeah,
I'm not trying to say anything about our age. I'm just saying, like,
no, man, this is where it started. I mean, I think it's important for people to realize that when I first started playing with you, I didn't grow up studying the bass. I wasn't a bass player. Like, I didn't find it in 7th grade and it spoke to me. I was a piano player, played clarinet for a long time in the band, tried to play guitar, thought I was a pretty competent guitar player. And in the band that became Eureka Farm, where I met Jason and played with Jason, that was a band that was Ben from Death Cab playing drums. I was playing guitar through an octave pedal, and the singer-songwriter Armand in that band. And we went to cut some songs, and the guitar and octave pedal thing wasn't working. I had an old bass that I had picked up at some point in my travels, kind of dusted it off, and I was like, well, I'll just play all these guitar lines that I've been playing with the octave pedal on a bass. Sounded good in the studio, and from that minute on, I was a bass player. But I didn't really understand the fundamentals of bass because I just sort of imported my limited guitar toolkit onto that instrument until I met Jason. And
hold on, time out, footnote here. I'd already been playing drums for like 8 years.
Totally.
I want to say something like that.
Yeah.
When I met Nick, dude rolls in. I thought it was like a SG, not a bass.
It was. Oh, well, my first guitar, I was playing a red SG through an octave pedal, just playing, weird lines on the guitar that just had a subharmonic content. Didn't even really track that well. That's why when we went to record for real, we realized this isn't working. So anyway, long story short, Eureka Farm with Jason is where I got my first massive dose of schooling. And I'll say that 25 years on, I still get a massive dose of rhythmic schooling from this dude. He is part and parcel why I'm sound half as competent on my instrument, because he's really, I'll just say he's going to charge me for some back work because he's been carrying this rhythm section for so long. So his back's going to give out at some point. And
you're still on the team. We're both on the team.
Either way,
we haven't been traded. Look,
that's true. That's true.
We're doing good.
We're hanging in there. We're hanging in there.
The season's been canceled. We're still on the same team.
So I mean, I think it's important that we do start in the beginning with the Eureka Farm jams, because what's interesting about Eureka Farm is I don't think that we had a single song in 4/4 or any kind of standard time signature, really. I mean, maybe we had a couple sections in songs that really straightened out, but
not in the beginning. Maybe, I don't know. And I don't think we had a single either.
No,
I think it was really hard. even we had a record deal with a little independent label in Seattle. I don't think they knew what to do with us.
That's true.
And I will say that I stayed in Eureka Farm, and this is a story for another day. But Nick made the right move, jumped to Death Cab, and then I followed him there some years later.
That's true.
Look, I want to talk about this music because most people don't. I mean, we're only going to talk about it a little bit. We're really going to get into Death Cab catalog and the thing that Nick and I do, that we've been doing for the past 20 years. But this piece of metal here, you can't really focus on it. It says 1996 on it. And this was part of a snare drum. This was like the side of a snare drum that this guy in Seattle made, this guy named Greg Keplinger, still there. And he would roll big pieces of steel and brass, and he would lob off part of it where he would then weld the shell together. Well, one day I was in his house, in his workshop, next to his kitchen sink, and I was like, what's this piece of metal? And I just started tapping on it, and it had this cool sound, and I put it on a drum, and it sounded freaky on a drum. And so I was like, can you drill a hole in it? And he drilled a hole in it, and I put a little clip on it. And next thing you know, I was kind of doing some weird stuff because I was in this, of course, weird prog rock band, and I didn't want stock drum sounds at all. So I ended up coming with this beat where I actually play it as part of the backbeat, this metal piece. So I'm going to turn my vocal mic off so it sounds a little better, but I'm going to play you an example of something we did. And the way this is going to work for the rest of this episode is I'm going to give you some live drum examples. I recorded these parts, sent them to Nick. He's got them on his little fancy dancy playback rig, and he's going to show you what he did on the bass for all the songs we're going to cover today. But we're going to start with a song called Teleprompter, which was on the very first Eureka Farm record. And really, Nick and the roots that Nick and I share. This was the beginning, playing in 5. I'm going to start slow and count it off so you can see what I'm doing, and then we'll pick it up to pace. Nick will. I'll let Nick take the wheel on this.
I hope.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, when it was more up to pace, it was more, let me see if I can find this tempo right here. This is more what it sounded like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So really kind of a weird beat. It's like, how do you put any kind of music to that? Well, Nick has a perfect example of what this song sounded like with bass and drums.
Totally. So part for me was just a looping groove over that, and really kind of just giving some movement to it as much as anything. And it went like this. It's pretty straightforward, but I guess what we're not including in this is not only were we playing along in 5, but then eventually we would all launch into some 3-part harmonies. And I am not going to sing for you today.
No, we had to sing too. Nick and I were backup singers. Yes,
yeah. All right. So this, I don't know if this is going to work over here. Give me a chance if this is a little bit of technical problems, but we'll see if I can do this here. You got it. That's it.
Solid. That's rude.
So
we had to get that out of the way.
To get that out of the way. Thanks for that, Jason. That was a good memory.
Yeah, no,
Good
it was all good. I just wanted to point out to people that even though Nick and I play very supportive roles in Death Cab for Cutie, sometimes we get to pop a few wheelies, and I guess we were like kids on BMX bikes when we started out, is what I'm trying to say.
Totally.
But it's a perfect segue. So the way this is going to work today is, like I had mentioned before, we have a bunch of Death Cab songs that we prepared for you guys. I see you're all chime in. You got a bunch of comments. You want to hear a lot of things. If we have time after we do what's been prepared and all our anecdotes, we will happily talk about some of these songs you guys are requesting. But let's segue into I don't know. What do you want to? You want to talk about how we got started, or should we just get into breaking down songs? You want cliff notes, or what do you think, Nick?
I think before we get into before we really get into individual breakdown songs, I think it might be interesting for people to hear a little bit about how kind of top level how we approach working together, but also how it works in our band. Because, you know, I think that what's unique about our band, certainly, and I don't know how a lot of other bands work, but I've always felt like it's kind of a unique working arrangement, and that's that, you know, we have a situation where we have a primary songwriter, Ben Gibbard, and he demos like crazy at home. So he'll bring all kinds of songs to us in various forms, sometimes fully fleshed out. He's got a drum hook, he's got a bass part, he's got guitar parts, piano, vocal, everything. Mainly, bare minimum, it's always a vocal and some chord changes, but there can be all kinds of embellishments all the way up to a fully fleshed out song. And then it's kind of, at that point, it's on us as a band to sort of absorb those demos and take, if a part's been given to us, to sort of take that part and make it our own, to just play it as best as we can. And I think that the thing for me that it's important for people to know in the way that I approach playing bass in this band, it's about kind of checking your ego at the door, and realizing that, like, I'm in a band with a fantastic drummer and 4 other players who are really good multi-instrumentalists. Any one of us could pick up a guitar or a bass or some piano and find something cool and do it. And I think the thing in Death Cab over the years has been just to allow the best ideas to sort of rise to the top and not get personally attached to, I wrote this bass line and it's the coolest thing. If it's just not working and nobody's feeling it, then it's not the coolest thing. And in that sense, you know, as we get into song by song stuff, I think there'll be some examples that you've chosen, Jason, that are like very much, this bass line was given to me. Like, we'll talk about Summer Skin next. That's a song where Ben came in with that bass line and was like, this was part and parcel with how I demoed the song around the piano part. And it became an effort on my part then to just sort of play it better than his demo and make it my own bass line, you know. And in that sense, like, you know, giving Ben all the credit in the world for writing the part, but certainly it was, you know, it's kind of just like one of those things where you just have to let the best idea win and try to commit the rest of it to you know, whatever you can bring to it. And, you know, in a lot of cases, it's all just performance stuff. You know, how can I make this feel good in my hands and feel good with Jason? And then that's us kind of locking in parts, you know, based on what's sort of been handed to us.
Yeah,
if that makes any sense.
No, and I will add too, we'll get into it. We'll get into Summer Skin right away, but I will add that though we take all these suggestions, there have been times when someone has a suggestion, they hear it and they really want to hear it, and you play it and it's just doesn't work the same way. It's not as natural coming through Nick's hands or my hands, or
Totally.
or even if it's a lyric or a vocal suggestion or a guitar part. It's like Nick said, dropping the ego and just being willing to try things.
Yeah.
So that the best part wins is what the reason we've been able to survive and continue to make records, without a doubt. Yep. So to get into Summer Skin, like before, I might have shown this on a previous episode, maybe with a different snare drum, but I'm going to go into a little more depth with it here, which is actually how to play it. So with Summer Skin, I started with that loop. I occasionally fill folders full of loops and send them to the guys. And if there's anything in there that sparks their interest and they want to write some music around it, great. If they don't, that's fine. But Summer Skin was one of those songs that worked, or one of those loops that worked for Ben. And I didn't know when I sent it to him, actually, the loop was just in 2, or it was like a 4-bar loop, and his piano phrase was like a 3-bar phrase, which was super cool, which is something you'll pick up on when you hear Nick play to it solo with me. So to break it down, it involves a sticking that's right, right, left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, but on the snare drum. And then there's more of a dynamic shift where it starts loud and finishes quiet, like this. And then it starts with 2 bass drum hits supported by the floor tom. That's the start of it. And that's basically the whole thing, except I phrase it a little bit different. Here's what the whole part sounds like. There's a pickup on the snare drum at the end of the phrase. And then the only other thing is we often talk about like what makes a song feel right. Is it downbeats? Is it upbeats? And I have this little tambourine that I put on the hi-hat, and I keep the ands 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that's basically the whole part. There's a couple fills in the song that are actually 2 fills exactly in the song, and they're the same fill. One just before going into the bridge, or in the bridge, and one at the very end of the song to end it. That's it. Because my part was meant to be purely supportive so that you focused on the lyric, the bass part, piano chords, everything else happening. So here's what it sounds like. Nick, you should play them the version of bass and drums that you have.
Yeah, I'll play that and then kind of just talk about, yeah. I mean, again, this was a line that was given to me, and what I've always loved about this line is because it was such an integral part of the original nucleus of the song, the way that it interacts with the piano changes, but also specifically how it sits against Ben's vocal, and that's something that I think you'll see as a kind of a theme through a lot of the bass playing, a lot of the stuff that I write, that Ben writes, that Jason plays, that he writes. And we really are this band that sort of focuses in on supporting the vocal the best that we can. And thankfully we have a singer who likes to leave good spacing in between phrases and stuff, because it allows us to sort of pop through and sort of wave in those little holes. And generally my approach is to kind of stay out of the vocals way. And I think that's kind of key, because it keeps things simplified. I'm not a real walking all over the neck, showy kind of pop and wheelie bass player, because I don't want to step on. I want the vocal to be the thing that's, first and foremost, that's hitting your ears. And then if there are quick moments, if there are passing notes, if there are small fills that can happen in between vocal phrases or to kind of set up a change or something like that, cool, that sounds great. But generally, I'm a big fan of repetition to the point of kind of becoming invisible. Like it's there, it's a texture, you can feel it, it's there, but it's after your ear sort of gets used to it, it becomes sort of part of the painting, and you don't really focus specifically on the bass part. That would be a kind of a strange thing. And I mean, there are bands that do that well. We're just not that band. We were not a bass focused band, thankfully, because I don't know what I'd do. Anyway, so this is a line. Again, this is another part of this. In if we're doing educational stuff, this is a really good. I was never formally trained on the bass, so I like trying to. I know there are like academic ways to approach fingering and phrasing based on economy of movement. I really like traveling all over the neck to find where that note sounds the best on your instrument. And every instrument that I play, certain notes just sound better in certain registers, and you just kind of have to play your instrument for a while to figure out, like, oh man, sounds better down here. I mean, like a revelation for me in that was that, Fascination Street by The Cure, Simon Gallup plays that whole line on the E string, and he's just all up and down it, instead of, you see people coming down here, starting on the A string and that kind of stuff. And it's cool, you can pull it off, but there's just something rad that happens when you're sliding around for notes, when you're traveling across the distance of the neck to find something that adds a little more hang time, sometimes just a little more sauce. So Summer Skin's kind of cool that way, because it's got a little high part in the tag and then the low part. And it goes like this against the drums. If I can get this to work again. Just like that. The thing that I like doing in that song, particularly for me, I like getting lazy with my hand slides into the notes. So I like doing and then kind of just letting my finger drag down the string, and then same with there's a lot of little slurs and weird things that kind of happen because I kind of like that laconic approach. Again, for me it reflects a little bit of that laziness of that feeling in the song of, you know, summer's ending. It's just kind of things are feeling kind of heavy, and I don't know. There's a relaxed feeling about it that I also just kind of bring into the performance of it, which is not really here nor there, but those kinds of things do inform me as a bass player.
That's great.
Along the way. And it, like I said, has less to do with playing straight down, right on the beat, perfect, perfect fretted notes, at least on certain songs. And that's what
I mean, we have those songs in our catalog too. I mean, that's what makes it so fun to play with you, is because we get to, sometimes we're like super straight and narrow and driving together. Like, like one person stamping out the other. Like my bass drum will disappear within your bass playing on stage often. And then sometimes there's this elasticy sensation, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. I want to keep things moving though, because we're like 20 minutes into this sucker. All right, next example we're going to talk about, I'm took it back a little bit. We're going to show you a song called Company Calls, which is something that Ben actually played drums on the record, right?
Way back when, yes. I believe he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah, I think that was a Ben song. I'm trying to remember what songs were Ben songs and what songs were
off of Facts. So the band was like in between drummers.
Nathan did play some stuff on Facts, but I don't, maybe like one or two. Anyway, I think Ben played it.
We'll give Ben credit on that.
I'll give Ben credit for it. Yeah.
There is it feels like his part, because he leaves certain holes in some of the parts for the playing, and it definitely lands with the guitar playing. So it's like, he's got that twin thing going on. But anyway, so when I came into the band, I had to learn 3 records and an EP before I started playing with the band. So I had to cover 3 different drummers' parts: Ben's parts, Nathan Good, and Michael Shore. And it's always been fun for me to put on a different hat and like learn somebody's parts. And I feel like every time we play those songs, no matter how old they are, I just like set the clock back. It's like Back to the Future style. Like, I'm going to be this guy or this drummer in this year during this record. So Company Calls is something Ben has always been a big fan of, playing the rims. He often will sit down and he'll have an idea, and I'm like, where's the hi-hat, man? And he's like, no, I want it on the rim. So this song, in general, Company Calls, I'll play a little bit of the part to click here, and then you'll hear Ben's or Nick's bass part to it. But this is what Company Calls sounds like. So that part, the chorus, when I went into the toms at the end, that was a perfect example of what I talked about, where, he would leave holes in the drum part. And I love playing that part every night that we play it. So Nick, you should just, since it's hot off of the tails of this, can you start with the
I'll start with it. Here we go. This is Company Calls with Jason and me. Hang on. Pretty much that's it. Sweet. A lot of traveling in that. again, kind of getting back to what I was talking about in Summer Skin, around just sliding around into notes, adding some stuff that's a little extra in terms of feel that way. Ben is like, he's my cop in the studio around sitting back and sliding back. He's always like, dude, downshift, don't lean on it. Like, get sloppy with the slides, put some sauce on it. Don't make it too clean. And I really like that kind of approach, because it kind of gets you. I'm a perfectionist. I think everybody in the band, if you really put us on the spot, we're hyper perfectionists. And I think that's a good thing in general to be, but it's nice to also allow for imperfection along the way, and to have somebody in the studio with you cheerleading you to be imperfect is extra nice.
Yeah, I feel like, a quick footnote, like in the beginning when I auditioned for Dead Cab, I did a ton of study, a whole bunch of work. I charted all the songs out, wrote everything, all the nuances, all the dynamic shifts.
Yeah.
And we're all in the same room, and I put the music on a stand, and like 2 songs in or 3 songs in, they were like, okay, you got the parts, like, sounds good. Now let's do it without the music, and like just use our ears and feel and just throw down. And it was such a relief to get to that point where all of a sudden we had a relationship where people were okay with the fact that I maybe didn't play everything perfect, but what they were most interested in is just me giving it my all.
Yep,
for sure. Speaking of giving it our all, we made a record called Narrow Stairs, and there a lot of those songs, if not all of them, I think were recorded on tape, and they're very much live performances.
Definitely.
And not a lot of those live performances. So we were going to talk about "I'll Possess Your Heart" because it's like the quintessential bass line from Nick Harmer, something he came up with. And we all definitely framed what we did around Nick, because he's just constant through the whole thing. And I mean, you could talk more about it because you came up with the part, but
so for me, this was a demo that came to me, just piano vocal, and I started playing around with it at home. And what I kind of was drawn to in the beginning is that it's not a straightforward lovey-dovey love song. There's some creepiness to it, and I think some people are like, it's funny when they just discover it, they're like, oh, "I Will Possess Your Heart's not a love song." We're like, well, it is a love song. It's also got some darkness in it that is intentional. And I think there is kind of a fine line between, falling in love and being obsessed about being in love. And I like that the song kind of walks that line. And so there was something that happened to me with the bass where I was like, I kind of like the idea of, and this is conceptual to support that thing that I was cueing into emotionally with the song, just an obsessive bass line, something that is repetitive to the point of, like I said, obsession. And I wanted to support the song, the mood of the song lyrically that way. But I also just kind of, in my approach to the line, really wanted that line, that thing that I was adding, to kind of reinforce that, even subconsciously at times. So, really the line came kind of quickly as I was just kind of playing along with it. And when I realized that I didn't want to change, I just wanted to keep playing it, and I was getting obsessed with it. I was like, oh, this is great. And then brought it into the studio when we were just doing pre-production stuff. And I remember we all started playing it a little bit. And I was like, hey, I've got this bass line for that song. What do you think about this? And I mean, to your credit, Jason, immediately you were like, I know what this dude's doing. He's laying this thing down. And then you just settled into that groove that goes way back to, like, the teleprompter days. Like, there's, that repetition in that line, and then, all the way through to, this line. And then you're just kind of doing this thing too. That's,
but I also wanted to be a little bit sketchy with it. There's kind of a manicness about my part.
Absolutely.
I think that if you're talking about, getting an image of the characters, that are the subjects of the lyrics, I think that there's a little bit of uneasiness at times. And the part that I came up with was actually played really quiet and really low and close to the drums. There's even footage out there that you can find that's somewhere on YouTube probably, but
somebody was pointing out, like, Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's so cool.
Just it was meant to be like kind of dodgy, like from my perspective, because you were the anchor. You were this massive anchor. So.
Yeah. So yeah, we always talked about I'm the metronome in that song.
Yeah.
I'm just plugging straight through, and everybody else gets kind of.
You're the drummer.
Yeah, exactly.
I
am in that song. It is like that. I saw somebody said that I Will Possess Your Heart is in the same vein as Every Breath You Take by the Police. Same kind of like, it's a love song, but it's also kind of obsessive and kind of creepy and weird. I mean, it's like that whole like weird thing that which I like. I think makes it at least intellectually and emotionally interesting for sure. So should I play now, or do you want to break down your part?
Why don't you play, and then I'll point something out after the fact.
Totally, let's do that. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward thing, D minor, but anyone can kind of feel it out. I think the thing that you might notice, if I can cue it up here, and the way that I play it, I only play it on the A and the D string. I see some people when they finger that high G that I go to, they do it down. They get down on the D or on the high G string, and I'm not. I don't really do that. So it's a. I think again, it's about economy and fingers. I'm sure there's probably a more quote unquote proper way of playing it, but again, I like kind of the.
Oh, there's your way of playing it.
There's my way of playing it, which includes some finger sauce. Here we go. So I'm gonna play your track. Here we go. That's it.
That's it. That's the part.
That's it. That's the part. I mean, there's a chorus change. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But I guess not chorus. I got a bridgey section, but yeah, pretty much that's it for me.
So for me, the only thing I wanted to point out is I'm going to switch to a foot cam for all you folks out there watching.
Yeah.
My left foot. Well, here's what the hand's doing. For my feet, though, I have a left foot. The foot chicks. Here we go. I'm going to switch to this for you guys so you can actually see it.
Amazing.
I know. I could even do I could even do this.
What?
Right? Lucas style. Okay, so.
Show off.
So the point is without that left foot, one E and two E and So on the of like every 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, like on the of 3. That's what makes the groove. And the only reason I could do that, the only reason I can get away with that is because Nick is doing something that isn't distracting. If he was popping like wheelies or slapping the bass or whatever,
we're hitting every 16th into the we're not.
I would be arrested, literally. I would be booted out of the band. So I think that we've done a really good job, all of us in the band, of realizing when we can do something and when we can't.
Right.
And there's a very famous look from Ben that I get because every night that we play, he's on the keys. You know what I'm talking about, and he looks right. If I go outside the lifeguard lines, he shoots me a look, and it either has to be really cool, and I just get a warning. But if it's not cool and I don't land what I'm trying to do outside the lines, then I definitely
Yep.
There's some shaming going on. No, we're all very supportive of each other's taking chances. But in the studio, what always wins is what's right and appropriate and musical for the song.
Totally. Hey, will you cut that that camera feed down smaller so people can see my bass a little bit better?
Why?
So I'm a little closer. There we go. Boom.
All right.
You know, just in case
Look at
somebody
you.
has any interest in what I'm doing on this
All right.
thing.
So,
Okay.
was there any other anecdote, like story about Possessed, or should we move on to the next song?
You know, I think we could move on to the next song. Yeah, it's time. Let's just get cruising through it. Yeah, totally.
All right. We had a lot of success with Plans, which was our major label debut, and there's some songs that people always want to hear, and we love to play. And one of those songs, and I get asked about it all the time, is Brothers on a Hotel Bed. And I will start by saying this. When you're in the studio, you use the studio to your advantage. If you're a vocalist, you can sing harmonies. You do your best to pull that off live. If you're a guitar player, you can stack chords. You can do a number of things. Studio is your empty blank canvas. So with Brothers in a Hotel Bed, I'm going to play you the part that I played in the studio, but you have to know that there are certain effects. There are things that, you know, there's a delay on the hi-hat. There's also, believe it or not, there's 3 drum parts tracked. So I will talk about those 3 parts, and then I will also talk about what that has evolved into in terms of us playing it live, and then you'll hear an example of that with Nick playing the bass line, and hopefully you still love the song just as much. So Brothers on a Hotel Bed started as just a brush part, like brushes on a snare drum and a bass drum. And the bass drum pattern was this. I'm actually going to give it a click reference so you guys can hear what I'm doing. That's how it started. And then I ended up putting my left hand on the hi-hat with a multi-rod. All right. And then, if I get back to the beginning here, then what I ended up doing is I wanted a tambourine on the hi-hat to help subdivide what's happening. And then also I ended up bringing the stick off of the snare drum, off of the hi-hat onto the snare drum for the middle portion of the song. So it transitioned. I'm going to play you the transition right now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, sounded like that. And there was 3 different parts. There was a, sorry, let me stop and play back. There was the brushes on a snare drum. There was just a snare drum on beat 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and then the bass drum part. So I ended up playing all those 3 parts live, or we do this as a band. And then the only other thing was at the end of the song, during the outro, I actually play with my fingers on the hi-hat, because a very funny story. We were done, we had tracked the song, and I was just hearing this thing. The headphones were on the floor, and I could hear Chris Walla doing playback through the headphones. He was just listening to some stuff, and I heard this part, and I was like, wow, it would be cool to overdub this. And so I ended up playing with my hands on the hi-hat. So that's the end of the song that you hear. It's actually me playing with the hands. I wish I'd had the whole track like Nick is able to play with me to play with, but I don't have the whole thing. But you're going to hear it when Nick plays it.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the breakdown on my part. And there's going to be something I'm doing later on that'll actually probably have these parts written, and for drummers who really want to be able to put it all together, that'll be available to you. But Nick, you got playback?
I do have playback. I just want to jump in and say that, the approach on the bass for this one, again, a bass line that there was no bass line that came to me the song was kind of formed as it was, but I didn't really want to take the song just hung so well in the air that I didn't really want to come up with a real competitive part or another melody or anything really to kind of fight against it. But I was somehow at the time I was really reluctant to just hold down root notes to mark changes. And one of the things that I can tell anybody that's interested that's watching here about my approach on bass playing, beyond me still going through lessons, still reading books on playing bass, still working with Jason on Rhythm Lab stuff. One of the best teachers in the world is just learning your favorite bass lines, and hearing other players play and sitting down with your instrument and trying to figure out how they did what they did. And early on in my life, a huge influence on me as a bass player is a bass player named Eric Avery, who played in Jane's Addiction, and certainly on the Nothing Shocking record. A lot of those bass lines are so just iconic, instantly recognizable to me anyway. And there's a song called Summertime Rolls that has this great open bass chord at the top of the song. And picks up that, instead of that low third, that high third, and it's a real, I don't know, there's just something kind of soft about that and melancholic. So
yeah, you never forget that bass line. Could listen to that all by itself.
Yeah, right. So this chord form, picking up that third, is the first chord in Brothers. And so I just, that's another kind of a thing that runs through bass parts that I write and play. It's kind of finding chordal information and letting notes kind of ring out, which is a little tough on the bass because certain harmonic frequencies just kind of get murky and mud up. But if you find it, there's another song we're going to go over at the end of this that I also kind of get into some chordal stuff on that I just like things kind of ringing out in. And so Brothers was sort of about marking, just root changes, but also adding just a little bit of extra and just sliding around on the neck again with the finger sauce. Somebody's laughing whenever I say that, so I'm just going to keep saying it. And here we go. This is Brothers. Did I get off?
Yeah, because I'm not in the same room with you. That's okay, though.
That's weird. Where did I? Oh, right there. Yeah. No, I lost the one. Look at that. Nope. See? I didn't let it hang long enough. I got too excited, everybody.
Real live
shit right there.
No lip syncing or anything going on.
No other piano playing.
Look, I'm going to say this too. Yeah. No. This is why you and I are so close on stage.
Right, that's true.
This is a super quiet drum part. It's a complex drum part. Maybe I'm not marking a big fat backbeat like everything else, but you know what you're doing.
I know what I'm doing. I don't know why I lost the count. Yeah. Well, no, everyone. I mean, at this point, we're running late. We've got 4 more songs that we're going to go over. I mean, I could go for it again, but you guys basically get my approach on that. There's nothing really more exciting as far as a part goes. It's real supportive, but again, it's about finding the support that adds just a little bit of extra character.
Beautiful. I love
that interval. And that interval is, you're going to see it again and again and again in bass lines that I write. I like reaching for that. That's such a good, that dominant sound. Anyway, you got it.
Well, let's keep moving. We're gonna talk about a track that we never play.
Yeah, right.
We get asked about all the time. Off of Narrow Stairs, right?
Yep.
Right. Your new twin size bed. I get asked about it a lot as a drummer, and I remember being in a tiny little, almost carpeted like vocal room at Tiny Telephone in San Francisco, and we tracked this song, and I think I had really tiny hi-hats. I'm going to put them on right now just for fun. I'll just take a second. And I just wanted this super compact drum sound. Let's do this one in reverse, actually. I'll play the drums second. I want you to...
No, I'll just play this. Yeah. I mean, this is, again, it dovetails right in because the first chord figure in is a version of what I was just telling you about in Twin Spies. And so, and I have, you know, in the band, if it's Tiny Vessels, like I like playing through those chords like that. So anyway, Twin Size Bed goes like this. If I can play this one. This one got sprung on me last night, folks, and like Jason said, we have not played this in a long time. That's it.
It's great. Well, it's so melodic.
This is a melodic line. Yeah.
I've always just loved how the song feels.
Yep.
And that's that is in the same vein as Tiny Vessels. I realize it's a similar drum beat. I mean, we all have our lanes, and we tend to stick to them. But I think that's what the people who enjoy our music recognize too. Like if all of a sudden we sounded like an entirely different band, I don't know, you might not be into the next record. Yeah. So these hi-hats have made history. They are the "I Will Possess Your Heart" hats. They are the title and registration hats. They are this track. They are the "Death of the Interior Decorator" hats. That's awesome. They are also made by Greg Kiplinger. I've had them for a very long time. This is a stainless steel hi-hat, which I challenge any other drummer to find a stainless steel hi-hat. But it to me, when we're picking out sounds in the studio to make songs, that is as important, if not more important, than what you play. If you have the wrong tone for something and it doesn't, you know, carry the song in the right way, lift the song, if it doesn't disappear in the right way, it's a problem. So these hats, they're super small and super fast, but that's what made this groove.
Cool.
So yeah,
so cool.
Just wanted to. I had to play that song. It's been a while. Maybe it'll come back into the rotation at some point in time. It feels so good.
Probably will. You never know.
But again, I think that I would not be able to do that if I didn't have a melodic, cool, supportive bass line running through the middle of that thing.
Yeah, it does. And there's a little more metronomic stuff that's happening on the bass line side of it too. Yeah, it's true. The next song is a really fun one for us that kind of, again, builds off of a lot of the things that I've been kind of weaving through my approach and kind of talking about stuff. And that's 60 and Punk we're going to talk about. One, because I think it's a really cool story how it came together in the studio, but two, it's a really great example of just like sitting way back and letting things be totally loose and imperfect and being and having imperfect that loose feel be intentional. And I think what was really cool about that song is about 60 and Punk is, it was a guitar song for a while, and we were kind of trying to figure out ways to approach it.
Right, I forgot about that. It was just acoustic guitar, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we're trying to make a kind of a musical approach to us that felt kind of compelling and fresh. And over a Christmas break, Ben played some piano instead of the guitar over it and brought that back in, and it's sort of starting to take some form, but we still really didn't know what to do with the approach. And I had been kind of messing around as we were listening to it in the studio over and over again with this bass line that kind of followed the changes, but was sort of Beatlesy, I guess is the best way of putting it. And one night, we stayed. It was me and you and Martin stayed late. With Zach. Was Zach and Dave there too? I think so.
Zach and Dave. I think Ben had gone home.
Ben, yeah, Ben
gone back
left.
to the
Yeah,
hotel,
yeah, Ben left for the day, and producer
Well, his
Rich
work
left.
was done.
His work was done. Yeah, and he was just like,
he
"Listen, I'm
wrote
listening
the
to this
song."
song forever." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the producer left, and so we just got a wild hair. We were just like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just go for this thing. And the only way this is going to work is if our approach to this that had this real lazy kind of like feel sloppy, not sloppy, loose is the thing, was just to kind of go as fast into it as possible, not get in our heads about nailing it. And so what I like about what showed up on the album is that's Jason in another room with one mic over a kick and a snare and a hat, essentially, right?
Kick, yeah,
or cymbal, ride, right?
Yeah, ride. I think there was a hi-hat, but it was really kick, snare, hat, ride. And the ride was this 23-inch, super dark, trashy, smoky, washy thing, and one mic. And it was just...
Yep. And I sat in the control room going straight in to the console, and I was I think that's the first and only take we did. I mean, maybe did it twice.
Well, I think that was the rule. We were like, one take. You only get one take.
One take. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was what's on the record. Is we just did it really quickly, and we're like, that's it. That's what we're gonna do. And not knowing if it was gonna stick or not, but it ended up sticking and really kind of gluing those sections together. So again, not necessarily novel, but the fun part in this song for me live is it's all about McGurr, and it's wearing 50-pound boots to sort of stay way back with you.
Well, it's
tough.
I think it's the tempo is 52. I mean, to put that in perspective, a lot of marches and pop hits or whatever, they're written at I say marches and pop hits. I say marches because historically John Philip Sousa wrote all marching band compositions at 120 because that was just like a tempo, right? That's what everyone's marching or everyone's metronome starts at. A lot of pop hits are around 120. But this song is 52. So it is supposed to feel like cinder block shoes and really, really lay back. The looser, the better.
So I'm going to play first, and then you can kind of get into your thing. But Jason sent me a track. You got to understand that, like, I've been playing with Jason long enough in my life that I can feel him with me when we're in the room, and that's enough. And like playing to a track of Jason playing loose is so hard because I don't have that. It's that chemical thing that happens when you're just sitting with someone, and you can just sense when the thing's going to happen. So it might take me a second to get into the feel of it, because again, this thing is by design.
Zach is confirming it was one take.
Yep. Well, yeah, Zach is confirming one take and 2 mics on the drums. Zach said, yep. Okay.
Also, cool. Zach, when we do this live, Zach has this mental game he plays with me where he sees how far behind the beat he can get.
Oh yeah, and that's the other part of it is we're all
total tug of
outer
war.
Space. Yeah, totally. Okay,
anyway.
So here's Jason. Got an 8 count. You get the idea. But yeah, I mean, you really just got to kind of let it. Yeah.
But the vocal phrasing is faster, so it works.
It works. It totally works.
It's like all puzzle pieces. Every composition I think the band's ever made. If someone is playing something whole notes or halftime, it's totally okay and appropriate and supportive for someone to play twice that much or to fill in the holes. Yep. And so what we're doing, I think, is really laying out so that Ben can tell a story and you really key into the lyrics of that song.
Yep.
I will.
It's really Zach and Ben's show, and then we just kind of pop in every once in a while, like we're kind of half drunk, and then we're done.
Absolutely. So I'm going to play to a click, and I'm going to mess with time a little bit just to show you, as a reference, the way it can kind of come unglued, but in a fun way.
Honestly, that's how it feels inside. Like, I lost you. There you go. Uh-oh. Where'd Jason go? Can anyone hear me? I'm looking in the comments right now. I can't hear Jason anymore. Jason completely cut out. He's having tech problems. Anybody chime in comments? Can they hear my vocal mic coming through and bass? Is everything still on my end working, or is it? Okay, cool. Hey, everybody.
Am I back?
Oh yeah, there you are. What happened?
Okay. So that's okay. Some reason I'm going to restart the studio computer. But I think what you should do
now you
should set up
huge latency problems.
Oh, I know, right? Isn't that awesome?
It's great.
So I'll do this.
I'll set up.
So you can hear my voice, right?
Yeah.
Set up the next track. Set up the next track. I'm going to restart the playback computer.
Okay. You do you. Hopefully it doesn't cut me out since you're hosting this thing. So the last song we're going to touch in on here before it's time for us to split is Kids in 99, which is a track that we did on an EP with Peter Cadis. And again, it really came together in the studio with parts based off around a demo that Ben had brought in, but a lot of open-ended stuff that the demo went through a round of suggestions and improvements. I think that Zach threw down a bunch of stuff on it in the beginning, flew in some loop stuff and some things that were like percussively just kind of showed us that it could move in a lot of different directions. And so it really kind of, in the studio, it sort of became a part, it sort of became a challenge to sort of keep improving and beat the demo that Zach had sort of put forward as a really compelling direction. So we got into it, and Jason kind of just settled into this part at a certain point that he'll get into pretty quickly. That includes putting a delay pedal on his snare, and that's a whole thing. That kind of informed so much of the first part of the song, rhythmically and otherwise, that I actually felt at the time that the best choice for me to do was to just sit out. So there's a couple of little moments where I sneak in during the bulk of the song, as I like to call it, and then we get to this point in the end where I think the song kind of becomes a song, and that's where it was on me to sort of find a part and write a part that could really add some propulsion to the end of the song and kind of make it sort of feel like now we're a band and we've sort of kicked into high gear. And so I really like that kind of juxtaposition in the song itself, that there's lots of holes sonically across the spectrum. People are kind of coming in and dropping out for certain sections, but by the end of the song, we are all, we're all on the gas pedal as a band. And that's a really exciting moment live. It was a really exciting moment in the studio. And to kind of bring it back musically to my approach in writing was kind of again, letting some chords hang, letting some notes get murky.
I'm back, right?
You are back.
Good. All right. I want.
So you'll hear just sort of how much extra information. Like everything's kind of rolling over itself, and I'm letting notes ring out over the top of each other and forming kind of passing things that I think adds a density to the line, but also a movement to it that honestly, if anybody's a bass player at home playing along, this bass line is super fun to play. It just
Do you want to start with why don't you just start with a playback track?
Yeah, I'll start with the playback track.
And then I'll break it down for him what I'm actually doing.
That sounds great to me. All right, so this is Kids in 99. I got to remember the count here. I think I got it. Okay. Anyway, that's essentially it. Me over and over again. But
all right,
and then Jason, you go into
how you get there. So this is another one of those songs that was the drum set was very curated. I put a towel over the snare drum head so it was really dry. I cranked it up. It was really tight. I used a delay pedal similar to this one that rattled, and I put it on top of my snare drum on the edge. I'm gonna switch to this camera. If you can see, it's right here on this. And when I played with one stick and then one multi-rod. Okay, so the thing that made the groove work that sounds like a delay is when I hit the pedal, it kind of jumps around on the snare drum. So the other thing is I'm playing traditional grip on this. I'm really pinching down on my thumb, and I'm really doing like a tight press roll almost every time I play the snare drum. So it's let me give myself a click. Actually, I don't need a click. It comes in. I come in on 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So I come in on 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. And sometimes when I hit that delay pedal, the hi-hat foot is going, here it is slow. Here's a top view of what I'm doing. 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's basically what I'm doing, except again, it's very dependent. The sound of the bass drum was really compressed, so it sounds super boomy. Like the production is really rad on that. But those are the parts that I'm playing, except at the end of the song, we needed it to sound a lot bigger. So when we do this live, I have a pedal on the drum. I'm using a multi-rod and a stick, and then really quickly, I have a one bar to lose the pedal that's on the drum, switch to sticks, and I do this roll in up the toms, which is what I'm going to play for you right now in playback, while this is still happening underneath. So it's like a double drum part. All right, so you're going to hear the playback of the intro beat with me playing the outro, which is what Nick just played.
can listen to this all damn day. Ah, it feels so good. Ah, I wish we could be in a room together.
I know, right? So that's how that part works. Again, I'm not cheating. I'm using the studio to my advantage because I hear a lot of parts. I hear a lot of complementary parts, whether it's clapping hands or percussion overdubs or whatever. And that groove sounds great when there's 2 drum parts, and it's a big payoff and a reward at the end. So again, there's a lot of technique that goes into what Nick is doing that we didn't really talk about today. There's technique that goes into what I'm doing that we didn't have a chance to totally break down. We tried to cram, what, 9 songs?
8, 9, yeah, something like that. Yeah, totally.
Into an hour.
Yeah.
So look, everybody, thank you so much. I'm sorry we didn't get to a lot of the questions you had, specifically about other songs, but it just means we can talk about this in the future. We could do this again.
We'll do a part 2. We can break down our gear and our people are asking about pedals and whether or not I play with picks, and there's lots of little detail information I'm happy to share. I don't really have a chance to go into that in a lot of places, so thanks for inviting me.
I will leave everybody with this advice. Like, who knows, what the future is going to be like for bands. It may be that people are going to be forming bands like this, communicating with other people online and sharing ideas back and forth. And just take into account, if we can't all get together in one place, or we certainly can't try out our songs in front of a large group of people, that you're being honest with each other and, playing music with your friends, and that you were able to share as much as possible so you can inform yourself, drop your ego, and get to the greatest songs and the greatest records.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Anyway, look, Nick, I love you. I miss you.
Love you too, man. Thanks for the invite.
I wish this was a, like I could pass through the door and then walk in the room and be like, how'd that go for you? And like take my headphones off.
Yeah, and Zach and Dave and Ben, if you're out there, miss you guys. Totally miss you guys.
Yep. Love you all. Anyway, thank you again, everybody, for tuning in and hearing the great Nick Harmer break down his line for us today. Appreciate it.